Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Artisan Pirate here. In today's fun video, we are back in the model train and nostalgia room looking at more retro video games. So really cool. In the two previous videos that we have posted, we looked at the original Nintendo Entertainment System and the games that went along with that system. And keep in mind, some of those games that we looked at were part of my mom's collection, and now they are all collected together and properly displayed. So really cool. Then we followed that up with looking at the Super Nintendo, the Super NES as it is called, and the games that went along with that system as well. And a few of those games were also part of my mom's collection, and now everything is collected together. So really cool. And I think it's only appropriate that we follow along to the next generation of Nintendo consoles and look at the Nintendo 64. It was Nintendo's big jump into the third dimension of the gaming world. So really cool. I have all of the stuff that I want to show you in today's video displayed here in front of me. But before we get to looking at the game system and the games and the peripherals that went with the game, I want to briefly talk about the Super Nintendo again, because I found some additional games when I found the N64 stuff. Remember, as I said in the previous video, not all of my game stuff was stored away collectively together in one single place. I packed it up as my interest changed and shifted, you know, from the game stuff when I was growing up to more history, pirate, and shark stuff to be displayed in my room and in my area and everything. So now we have a few Super Nintendo games to look at. So we're going to go over them very quickly before we get into the N64 stuff. The N64 is the commonplace name for the Nintendo 64. But for the Super Nintendo, we have Donkey Kong Country. It was the original adventure for Donkey Kong, and the game still holds up graphically today. And I know me and my cousin played this game so many times. I've beaten it a few times on the Nintendo Switch online feature that they have for the Nintendo Switch system, where you can go and get a yearly subscription and have access to some of the retro games. This game is featured in that game pack, and I have played it a few times, but I played it a lot on the original Super Nintendo as well. Then we have the sequel to that, Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy's Kong Quest. So this one had more bells and whistles, more impressive graphics for the time, and it was also another great adventure with the Donkey Kong characters. And then we have another one of my mom's games, and this is Super Mario All-Stars. It had all of the classic games from the original Nintendo, the original NES packed on it. I know she loved playing the original Mario adventures, and now she was able to play them on the Super Nintendo as well on one compact cartridge. Then we have Mortal Kombat 3, and this was the one that we played and passed along to everyone because it was just such a fun game. My cousin had the cheat code book where you could type in the cheat codes. I believe it was up, down, left, right, ABA, select, or start, and it unlocked all of the finishing moves. You know, you didn't have to punch in a button combination to unleash your finishing move or things like that. And then you could also do like different features like quicker time, slower time, or time off, I believe. So a really cool Mortal Kombat adventure, and this was the one that we played the most on the Super Nintendo, Mortal Kombat 3. And then we have Monopoly, the classic board game. I have so many fond memories of playing this game, the actual board game, I mean, with family and friends. We always loved setting it up. We've taken it on vacation a few times when I was in my youth, you know, to play while we were on vacation and relaxing, and I was happy to have a version of it to play virtually on the Super Nintendo. But those were the games that were found additionally with the N64 stuff. Before we get into the game cartridges, we will of course show off the game system itself as well as some of the peripherals that went with it. But here is my classic childhood Nintendo 64. It has the on-off switch there that toggles. You have the reset button there if you get stuck on a level, and you have the little doorway that opens to accept the cartridges. And that is one thing with this generation of video games that Nintendo stuck with. They kept their games on a cartridge as opposed to going to compact disc like the competition of PlayStation and the PS1 went with. And because the PlayStation 1 went with compact disc back then when these game systems were released, the compact disc could hold a lot more data and you could get a more graphically impressive game as opposed to the cartridges. But Nintendo stuck with the cartridges, and they still sold a phenomenal amount of the N64 and the games that went with it. Just keep in mind as we go forward, some of the games I'm going to show you were released both for the N64 and the original PS1, and because of the cartridge and compact disc differences, the graphics on the PS1 were more impressive as opposed to the Nintendo 64. But I have always been a huge Nintendo fan, and I have so many fond memories. But again, this is the game system I had growing up. You have the way to plug everything in the back, and I have those cables packed away. You do have 4 ports to allow for 4-player multiplayer, and then at the top you have this little door that opens to allow for the expansion pack to graphically improve the hardware in the N64 itself, and that was included with a game that I will show you and have a ton of nostalgia for. But again, it is cartridge based, and here is the cartridge I have displayed with the game system itself. Super Mario 64. It was Mario's first adventure and foray into the third dimension, and so many fixtures of the Mario series were established in this game as well as previous games. The Power Stars, you know, fighting Bowser and grabbing him by the tail and whipping him around like a rodeo. You know, the first adventure took place in Peach's castle, and you got to jump in the portraits that came to life and go on various adventures through the levels. Now, the camera was not the best in this game. Remember, everyone was still figuring out technically and graphically the camera for a third dimensional open world game, so to speak. But I have played this game over, and I've also beat it on the Nintendo Switch with that online feature I talked about. But you can see how the cartridge goes in there, and then it will lock in place. So this is the one I have displayed on the shelf, and the cartridge with it. Now, we do have a few peripherals, and I want to talk about how this whole video game idea for doing the video started, and it was with this Nintendo 64 controller and the cover that goes on it. So really, really cool. This is the Nintendo 64 controller. It had 3 prongs here, which was a very weird design back in the day, but it is a classic and iconic controller in today's world, just for the nostalgia purposes, and it has a Donkey Kong 64 banana themed holster on it. And when I found this cleaning up, or I didn't find it cleaning up, I had it displayed and it was so dusty and everything, I just took a picture of it and posted it on the Game Collecting Reddit page, and everyone was like, dude, you got to clean that up and properly display it. Do you know how much money is that's worth? So I went to eBay and just browsed around, and it kind of blew my mind. I mean, the value wasn't what was important to me. It was the nostalgia factor of playing the Donkey Kong game that I'll hold up here momentarily. But I went and 3D printed this controller holster here on the 3D printer. It was a free file from Thingiverse, and you can see how it holds the cord and it protects the slot that goes into the game itself, and then it sits comfortably there. But then I went and 3D printed stands for the rest of the game stuff I have displayed here, and I think it just adds an elegance to the display capabilities of stuff, and you have the N64 name down there. But this banana holder for Donkey Kong 64, DK64 as it's commonly called, was a mail-in offer from the Walmart stores. What they had was like a little game insider club, and I filled out the form when I was whatever age I was in 1999, 2000, 2001, in my very early teens, I believe, and they sent this out as a promotional gift to go along with the game, because the game was releasing right around the same time, and I've had it ever since. We did clean it up. I give it to my mom because I did not want to damage it cleaning it up with any kind of like hazardous chemicals, so I give it to her, and she cleaned it up nice for me with the proper cleaning supplies and everything, and I put it back on the controller, and now we have it properly displayed. But here we have another controller. But when I posted that Donkey Kong controller, I got the idea for doing the video game videos like we are doing now. Here is another controller, a classic red controller, and this one here also has the box. I know sometimes the boxes can be very valuable on their own accord. So there you have the box that it came in. And again, it has the classic 3-pronged design here. And a lot of the games were you holding the middle one and the one over here to where you could do the C buttons, which almost always controlled the camera for 3-dimensional worlds. But then some games also played like this with the D-pad. But with the N64, the Nintendo company released the joystick for those virtual adventures in a 3-dimensional open world. And then I have a clear blue controller here. I don't know if it is a licensed Nintendo product or if it's a knockoff, but I do like the clearness of it where you can see all of the electronics on the inside. I did have 3 controllers, as you just seen, but anytime we were inviting friends over, we always said, hey, if you got a Nintendo 64 and an extra controller, bring it when you come over, so all 4 people can play simultaneously with multiplayer on the N64. Then we have the Game Boy expansion pack here, and what these things do, they clip into the back of the controller. You can see how it would go there, and this one was for Pokemon Stadium to allow you to hook your Pokemon Game Boy games into the controller and play them in a three-dimensional virtual aspect. I believe this peripheral came with the Pokemon Stadium game that we will look at momentarily. And then I have a Rumble pack. This was also the generation that introduced the rumble feature to games. You know, if you were playing a racing game and you wrecked, the controller would vibrate a little bit with the rumble pack. Or if you were in a fighting game and, you know, you got punched or hit or kicked or something, it would also vibrate a little to hopefully immerse you in the game, in the simulation and everything. But this one took a couple batteries. You can see the battery compartment there. And then the final peripheral we are going to look at before looking at the games, we don't have as many games to look at as we did with the previous two systems, but I still want to look at them, is a microphone. It clips into the controller port, you can see there. And there was a little hard plastic piece that I can't find right now that clipped onto the controller kind of in that position to where you could talk to the game itself. And this was a peripheral for one game, again, that we will see momentarily. But that is all of the peripherals and add-ons for the N64, and now we will start looking at the games. I don't want to draw the video out entirely too long, but I do want to talk about the nostalgia factor. I've got a nice cup of classic Krispy Kreme donut shop coffee here. If you're in North Carolina, Krispy Kreme is a mainstay. Alright, now to look at all of the games. We'll just hold them up and talk about them briefly. Again, I don't want to draw the video out entirely too long. The first game here is Glover. Now, I do remember playing this game, but I don't remember ever getting very far in it. Glover is an anthropomorphic glove. So the glove, the fingers of the glove act as his arms and legs. And you can see the buttons on the glove represent his eyes. And you use that ball there that he bounces on to progress through the levels and solve puzzles and everything. Glad I have this game in the collection. Again, I just don't remember getting very far in the game. And what I'd love to do is be able to revisit all these games and, you know, just play them a little bit for nostalgia factors. Here we have NASCAR 99 with the classic Dale Earnhardt black number 3 Goodwrench Service Plus car. It's the version of the car he won the Daytona 500 in. Huge fan of racing growing up, and it was a mainstay in the household on Sunday after you got home from church and you had lunch. You sit down to watch some good old-fashioned racing, and everyone on my mom's side of the family pulled for Dale Earnhardt, so that was the car I always raced with on this game. Here we have Blast Corps with a nice blasting effect and a nice robot on the cover. I do remember playing this game here. I believe you kind of destroyed buildings and things like that in it. Here we have Hey You Pikachu, and this is what the microphone peripheral went with. So when you hooked this up, you were allowed to talk to Pikachu. I remember saving up my allowance to go and get this game. I believe I actually laid it away, you know, when Walmart had that feature, you know, and I just put a little bit of money down each and every time I got some, you know, getting my family to run me over to Walmart until I finally got the game in my possession, as I do here. And I remember the technology wasn't where it is now. Keep in mind, back when these games were released, 1998, 99, 2000, 2001. So when you talk to Pikachu, you were supposed to be able to instruct him like, hey Pikachu, eat. Hey Pikachu, let's go out and play. Hey Pikachu, let's go to the beach, things like that. But it was only very minimal phrases that the game recognized through the microphone itself. So please be aware of that. But it was a great advancement in gaming technology to have the microphone and be able to talk to Pikachu from the Pokemon series. Here we have Star Fox 64, and this one has a lot of memes associated with it. You know, would do a barrel roll, but you are controlling Fox McCloud and his iconic spaceship flying through, fighting all of the bad guys. And it had a branching storyline. So if you did this in this level, you went this way. If you did something else, you went another way. So it had a cool replay factor just to see which way all of the paths went. And I believe the Rumble pack that I showed you earlier was included with Star Fox 64. Not going in any particular order here, but here we have what a lot of people online still say is one of the best wrestling games ever released, and this is WWF No Mercy. Keep in mind it's WWE now, but a nice black cartridge here, and we sank so many hours into this, me and my late cousin, and we'll talk more about him as we look at some of these games here, but we sank so many hours into this game with the Creator Wrestler. It had a market where you could go and buy the legendary wrestlers, you know, and unlock them, or different pieces for your outfit to wrestle in, or different move sets entirely. But I did love the storyline that this had. And again, on the online communities, a lot of people still say that this is one of the best wrestling games ever released. Again, WWF No Mercy. And here we have WWF Warzone, and this is one of those games that was also released for the PlayStation 1, the original PlayStation, and because of the compact disc, you had more room for storage and graphical elements and everything. So there was actual video footage of the wrestlers on the PS1 version of this game as opposed to the N64 version. But again, I have so much love for the Nintendo gaming world and the characters and the game franchises and everything. I had to go with the Nintendo 64 in WWF Warzone. Here we have Mario Kart 64, another classic game in the archive, and I've played this one on the Nintendo Switch online gaming feature with the expansion pack and everything. So this one here, you took part as Mario or one of the classic characters. I always played as Toad or Yoshi because they were the lighter characters and they were the quicker characters, you know, to get to the front of the pack. I think this game also introduced the iconic blue shell that takes out everyone if you are far back in the pack. So a lot of iconic features for this, and it had 3 levels of difficulty: 50, 100, and 150cc, so beginner, intermediate, advanced. And if you cleared all of them, you were able to unlock a special start screen. Is also mirror mode, to where all of the tracks were mirrored and you had some additional gameplay features. Here we have Mario Party 2, and I believe this was one of my late cousin's games. He brought a lot of his games over and kind of left them with me, and as I said, my late cousin, he has unfortunately passed away, but we do have his games here to show off. We have Mario Party 2, Mario with the cowboy hat, the classic party games that allowed for 4 individual multiplayer levels, or 4 people playing at one time simultaneously, the classic board game series. And I don't have any memories with this game, but I did play a lot of Mario Party 4 on the Nintendo GameCube. Here we have Mickey's Speedway USA, again another game that I don't have a lot of fond memories with, but happy to have it in the collection, with Mickey Mouse there on the cover, so a Disney inspired racing game. Here we have Pokemon Stadium, and this was the first time I believe you were able to play with the Pokemon characters in a 3-dimensional aspect, and I believe the Game Boy reader came packaged with the Pokemon Stadium game. But it had a nice mini game level. It had a challenge mode where I think you had to go through 100 individual Pokemon trainers, so it was real cool. And it was also cool to be able to take your Pokemon from your Game Boy and put them into the virtual 3rd-dimensional world as well. Here we have Pokemon Stadium 2, and this was another one of my late cousin's games. And this one is gold and silver, kind of a two-toned appearance, because that was when this game was released, when Pokemon Gold and Silver was out on the markets. But you have the classic Pokemon characters of Lugia and Oh-Oh, the legendary birds there, and it was a little bit more graphically impressive than the previous game, Pokemon Stadium 1. And again, this was one of my cousin's games. Here we have Monster Truck Madness 64. You were able to drive the iconic monster truck characters of Bigfoot and Gravedigger, and I also think the wrestler characters, monster trucks, in this game, but there was a battle mode and also a race mode in the 3rd dimension, so really cool. Always a fan of racing games. And here we have Rugrats Scavenger Hunt. Rugrats were very popular in the early 90s on the Nickelodeon channel. I know me and my little cousins watched it a lot when they were over. You had Tommy, Chucky, Phil, Lil, Angelica, Cynthia, I don't remember the other girl's name, Susie, and then you had later introduced Dil, Tommy's brother, in the first Rugrats movie. I do have a fondness for that growing up, and it looks like with that sticker there, this might have been a rental cartridge at some point, and this one might have been picked up at a yard sale or garage sale or a thrift store or something, but it looks like it has maybe the Blockbuster rental sticker there on it. Mortal Kombat Mythology Sub-Zero, a Mortal Kombat game themed entirely to the ice character of Sub-Zero. He's associated with ice, snow, ice cubes, and cold weather and everything. So it has a nice snowy logo there on the cover. I don't have many memories of that game, but it's another one in the collection. Here we have another one of my late cousin's games, Resident Evil 2, and this was not a game that I have many fond memories with as well. My favorite game in the franchise was Resident Evil 4 for the Nintendo GameCube, and it was so massive that it was on 2 individual discs for the Nintendo GameCube. But here is the second one in the series, Resident Evil 2, the zombie fighting game. Here we have Lego Racers, a nice Lego inspired game. I remember building Legos when I was a kid, and I have a huge fondness for Legos and their history with the building mechanic of what they do. And I love going to the Lego stores and looking at the immaculate Lego sets that they have now on the market. And I still have my classic Lego sets packed away, excuse me. Here we have Donkey Kong 64, and this is what the Donkey Kong banana holder went with. So there you see a nice bright yellow cartridge, and this is not a very popular game in the gaming community. Some people love it, some people do not like it because of all of the collectibles in it. This was a massive game for the time, and that was what required the expansion pack that I showed you at the beginning of the video that went down in the N64 to allow for better graphics and better hardware to present the game properly. But I believe at one point this game held the Guinness World Records for most collectibles in a game, and you had to collect each and every one of them, and it took so long to do so. And I don't think I ever completed it 101%, but you had to collect everything to get it 101%, if that makes any sense. And I love that game, and I wish it was on the Nintendo Online feature for the Nintendo Switch so I could go back and revisit it. And I even have the strategy guide here for N64, for Donkey Kong 64, that allowed for all of the cheats and where everything was hidden and how to better beat the boss battles and where all of the goodies were hidden that you were trying to collect. Here we have the first original South Park game. I am from that generation where South Park played a huge part in popular culture, and I believe this was the very first game released for that show. Got a few more to look at real quick. Here we have WCW versus NWO World Tour. I believe this was the first wrestling game for the N64, and it used a game engine from a game over in Japan, and they just brought it over and themed it to WCW versus NWO. And you have the evil Hollywood Hulk Hogan when he was playing the bad guy, and the Giant, later known as the Big Show in the WWF, now WWE, there on the cover. And the one I have the most memories with is WCW versus NWO Revenge, and you have Hollywood Hulk Hogan, Kevin Nash, Raven, and Bill Goldberg there on the cover. But it was cool going through the championship modes and trying to win all of the championship rounds and just progress through each and every one of the levels to be the World Heavyweight Champion. And then I think that same game engine was used for the WWF No Mercy game that I showed you earlier. Here we have Diddy Kong Racing, another game I wish that was released on the Nintendo Switch Online expansion pack. But you take charge of Diddy Kong and other Rare characters. Rare was the company that produced it and the Donkey Kong games. And it was an action-adventure open-world racing game. So you had boss battles in a racing manner. You had tasks you had to complete in the various races. And it's a very popular game among gaming community fans. And it's another game, again, I wish was on the online feature for the Nintendo Switch. Here we have Pokemon Snap, and this was a game that a lot of fans loved, and it was a way to see Pokemon in their natural habitat because it is a fixed rail photography game, meaning your character is on a set path in a car and you are going around trying to take the best possible pictures of Pokemon, and at the end of the level you can get graded and each of your photos will get a score, and you're trying to go back and get better and better photos. I did beat this game on the Nintendo 64 and unlocked everything, and I've also beat it on the Nintendo Switch Online expansion pack. But a great way to see Pokemon, how people envision them in their natural environment. Here we have WCW Backstage Assault, and on the cover you have Bill Goldberg giving his jackhammer finishing move, to an opponent. Nice blue cartridge there. Don't have many fond memories of it. This was another one of my late cousin's games. Here we have South Park Chef's Love Shack, another one of my late cousin's games, and I do not have really many memories of playing this game either, and I don't know if it was either me or him that put the number 1 on it, or even someone else if it was picked up at like a garage sale, yard sale, or thrift store, but 2 of the games associated with that popular TV show that came out. Again, it was just a big part of pop culture back then. You see a lot of people with the Cartman shirt and things like that on. And then the final game we're going to look at is another wrestling game, WWF WrestleMania 2000. Nice black cartridge there. So really, really cool. This was a nice foray into the world of wrestling, and it was another game where you wanted to progress through all of the championship levels and win the championship belt. So really cool. Really nice classic black cartridge there that kind of goes along with the sleek design of the N64. do have a lot of fond memories playing this with my cousins. So really, really cool. That is all the games and peripherals that I have to show you at the time of this video's recording. Going back now on the Nintendo Switch Online Archive, I'm able to play some games that are not in this collection, like Excitebike 64 and the F-Zero game for the N64. And if it lines up, I would like to get those games physically in the cartridge format like I've shown you here, just to have in the collection. But by no means is it going to be a thing where I go out and start seeking out games over on eBay or anything. It's just if I happen to see them at a yard sale, a thrift store, or up at McKay's in Mebane for a good deal, I might pick them up and add them to the collection. But that's going to be about all for the N64 itself, and the next generation that will follow is the classic and iconic GameCube game, and that is the game system that I have the most fondness for. I'm still looking for my GameCube stuff. I have found the instruction manuals for some of the games. They were in the box with the N64 stuff, but I'm eager to find the GameCube stuff and talk about them because I have the most nostalgia with that game system. Keep in mind the time frame that these games came out. I was in elementary school going into middle school when the N64 was popular, and then when I was going about midway through the 6th grade in middle school, that is when the GameCube came out. So it was a big part of pop culture then, and all of the games, and I have so many fond memories of it, and I look forward to showing them over here on the platform once I find them and get them all collected and cleaned up and documenting them over on a featured video. But I hope you guys have found this video fun and informative, and I thank you guys for going down memory lane in a nostalgic way with me from start to finish. Hopefully the video was not too long or drawn out for your guys, and if there's a Nintendo 64 game that you have a fondness for, please let me know down in the comments below. But that's going to about wrap it up for this one. Again, I hope you guys have enjoyed the video, and if you're new to the channel, hopefully you'll click that subscribe button and follow me across all my social media feeds under the Artisan Pirate name. As always, links to contact me as well as all my social media feeds will always be linked down in the description box below these videos. That's about all for this one, and remember guys, if I can make it or do it, so can you guys. I'm the Artisan Pirate. Take care, and I'll see you guys real soon.